This project nearly had me in tears. Please watch on to find out why. Hi, I'm Stuart at Break the Mould Furniture. In this video I am making an oak door with bespoke stained glass. So I started off by making the frame for the door, chiselling out the joints to clean them up and clamping it tight. So then I took the header for the frame to the table saw and cut the housing for the middle style of the frame. So I do this by setting the height of the blade on the table saw, taking it out in consecutive cuts and chiseling to clean up the leftover. Then fit it together, and the same for the sill on the door frame. I mark out and cut the housing for the middle style. Same process, just set the height on the table saw and take the housing joint out in a series of saw drafts. This can be quite time consuming at times, but you get a very accurate joint. A small amount of chiselling just to clean up the leftover, what's left between the saw drafts, and that's it. It'll fit like a glove, hopefully. Some slow-mo action there. Yeah, fits perfectly. So then when I've constructed the frame for the door, I will take the measurements from the frame, cut the middle style, which separates the door from the fan light. So here I'm just cutting the middle section to length, ready to fit it into the frame. So this door was commissioned by a client, and it was very personal, as the stained glass in the door was made from pictures that their son had photographed before he died. So it was quite an emotional experience working on this commission for the clients, as their son had died at quite a young age, and the door, including the stained glass, was to remember their son. So here I am thicknessing the sections for the door and just laying out the layout for my bottom and middle rail, which need to be double the thickness of the top rail on the door. So I'm just checking which grain pattern and colour fits best to get a seamless match between the two pieces when glued together. So, yeah, as I was saying, it was an emotional one, and one that I was proud to work on. And the clients had a tear in their eye when it was finished, which just makes all the hard work more than worthwhile. So here, to join the bottom and middle rail, I'm using some domino joints, which are floating tenon joints. So the domino will cut 2 mortises, and you use a floating tenon or domino to join the pieces, and when that's glued together, it will be rock solid. So I'm just marking out where the dominoes will go. Setting up the cutter for the right size of domino, and cut the mortises ready for the dominoes to be inserted. It's a bit strange actually watching myself work. Actually, I look like I know what I'm doing here. So the dominoes will be inserted, and I will do a dry fit just to make sure everything fits level before I come to the glue up. And then I'll set up my clamps, check everything aligns properly, the joint between each board is seamless when glued together. So yep, I'll just need to separate them, remove the dominoes, glue it up and clamp it and leave it overnight. Some of these modern wood glues recommend clamping for 10 minutes, but I leave everything overnight in the clamps just to make sure that it's 100% set before I do any other work on it. So get it glued up and in the clamps, and then I can move on to the next piece of the door. So the Festool Domino is a great machine. I would probably go as far as to say it's revolutionised woodworking. I was cutting mortise and tenons for everything before I bought this machine, and it just saves so much time. So I just put a clamp between the two pieces, as when the F clamps are tightened, it can cause a bit of pressure on the bottom side of the rails and force it up in the centre. So I just put a clamp on to hold that down. And then when it's out the clamp, just sand everything, get rid of any excess glue and smooth it all off. So at this stage, I would just sand with an 80 grit sandpaper, just roughly taking off a lot of material, and then the finishing sanding will be done with a 120 grit after the door is constructed. So here I'm cutting the stiles to length for the door on the table saw. These will be cut and then joint to the rails that I laminated together earlier. So now cutting the rails to length. These will be cut on one side, and then I'll set a stop on the sliding table on the saw so that each one is exactly the same length. So that's the bottom and mid rail cut to length. Cut the top rail, and then these will be scribed. So on the styles of the door, I've created a rebate with an ovalo cutter to create the profile on the door, and on the ends of the rails I will use the female cutter, which basically cuts the sort of negative shape of the ovalo cutter so that the two fit together. I'll show this in a minute. I'm just setting up here to cut these scribe cuts on the end of the rails so that they fit to the styles. So this is the scribe cut, which is the negative of the profile on the rails, and when put together it should just fit perfectly. If I could hold it still, you would see, just like this. So as you can see here, for the doors I use engineered oak. So this is created from oak, solid clear faced oak on all sides with blocks of oak in the centre. So this creates a much more stable door, whereas in the past when I've made doors from solid pieces of timber, you get slight twisting and cupping in the boards, which can cause problems with how neatly the door closes into the frame. So here I would just do a dry fit to make sure my scribe cuts all fit to the styles. This one, so sometimes when the scribes are cut, it leaves this about 1mm excess on the end of the cut, which doesn't allow the joint to fit perfectly. So that what I was doing there is just taking that wee millimetre off the edge to allow them to have a tight fit. I will then check that the door's square by measuring corner to corner, make sure that the corners are the same distance, and then mark out for my dominoes to join the rails to the styles. Just checking everything's flat, fitting nicely. And this is the fan light panel that goes in the other section of the door frame, and the stained glass will be in two sections which will tie in together. So same process for this panel, just small rails fit into styles with the same joints, and then these will be dominoed and glued together. So then I would separate everything and start to cut the dominoes. These non-slip mats are great for this. It's just a rubber mat, lay it down, put your workpiece on top of it, and it stops everything sliding when you're working with it. So here I'm cutting the dominoes again with the domino jointer, which probably my favourite machine in the workshop. Like it saves a ton of time. So easy to work as well. Just put a pencil line on each piece where you want the dominoes to line up, and then there's a centre mark on the machine. Put that on your pencil line, set the height, cut the domino, cut the mortise for the dominoes with the machine, and then the dominoes will be inserted into these mortises. So this is me cutting the mortises into the stiles of the door to align the dominoes from the rails to the stiles. These headphones that I'm using are brilliant. They Bluetooth headphones, protective spit it out. So there's Bluetooth ear defenders, and I can connect them to my phone, listen to podcasts, music, and it drowns out the noise of the machines. So great, best Christmas present I've had in a long time. So here I'm just cutting the dominoes for the panel, which is basically like a half-size door, which will be fixed to the frame. It won't open. So then the dominoes will be inserted, everything will be clamped together dry without any glue, just to make sure everything lines up before I then go on to glue it up and clamp it overnight. So with the domino machine, the mortise is just the perfect size for the domino every time, whereas when cutting mortise and tenons, there's always that bit of shaving, try it, shave a bit more off it, get it to fit, which just is so time consuming that when making doors and windows, it just saves a ton of time to use the domino. Speeds everything up, and everything just aligns perfectly. So here I'm just doing my dry fit, make sure everything fits properly, all the joints align. I would always do a dry fit before any glue up, because when the glue's on the piece, and if you come across something that doesn't quite fit, then you're into cleaning up the glue, waiting for it to dry before you can then scrape off any excess glue and then get into re-gluing it and clamping it. I've made that mistake once and I'll never do it again. So everything's dry fitted, fits perfectly. So then I'll take it apart with a soft rubber mallet to save damaging anything, remove the dominoes, ready for the glue. So I would put the glue in the mortises both sides, but where the timber on the rail meets the frame, meets the stile, I would only put glue on one side. I know loads of people put glue both sides, but I don't think there's any need for that. I think it's overkill. So just gluing it up now. These wee bottles are great as well. I bought these. They're the bottles that would be used for like tomato ketchup and stuff in restaurants. And it's so much easier using that for wood glue than the bottles that the wood glue comes in. Has like a wee cap on the end, and when the glue dries in it, it always seems to jam up and make it more difficult to squeeze the glue out the older the bottle becomes, whereas with these, it's so much easier, saves a lot of time. So I probably, as you can tell, I like things to be quite efficient in the workshop, and I think buying the right tools and the right equipment for the job just makes life so much easier. So I then just use a small paintbrush to spread the glue, put the dominoes in, and work my way through putting everything together. Align all the dominoes, put it together with the rubber mallet before clamping it up and checking that everything's square and aligns properly. Clean up any excess glue. This will save a bit of time in sanding later. So I'm just checking corner to corner to make sure that the door is square. And just checking the sizes for where the oak panel will be inserted in the bottom of the door and the stained glass in the top. So this is a finished piece. The stained glass for this door was designed around the photographs that the client's son had taken before he died, and it was an emotional experience when we fitted the door and the client had a tear in their eyes, as there was just so many things that reminded them of their son. So it was a pleasure to work on this door. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel for further projects. Thank you very much for watching till the end.